and welcome to another installment of our Common Book programming. I'm Harry Holden, and I teach ESOL here at the North Lake campus, where I also serve on the Common Book Committee. Today, I'm joined by a faculty colleague and a fellow member of the Common Book Committee, Eric Pleasant. Thanks for being here, Eric. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I am a professor of mathematics at North Lake College, and I've been with the college for, I guess, about 5 years now.
How did you get to where you are today?
A lot of winding roads and detours that led me to where I needed to be, basically. I had never intended to be a teacher, but as a graduate student, well, and I guess I should go back and say I didn't go back to school for my bachelor's degree until I was in my late 30s. So I was 38, went back to school wanting to be an actuary because I heard that they didn't have to work in the office as much as they did research type stuff at home, and that they made really good money. And I thought, oh, that sounds like a great fit for me, because I was a rebellious kid growing up. So I didn't like to follow all the rules, and I thought this will be great. And along the way, I was recruited into the graduate school for mathematics, and they offered a small stipend for teaching 1 or 2 classes a semester plus free tuition. So I accepted the graduate assistant position, and the very first day, as I was walking in to start teaching, and whenever I tell this to my students, I say, because I was older, we did actually have cell phones at the time, because they usually think I come from the time before cell phones, which I do. But anyway, I called my mother and told her, I said, I'm about to go in and teach my first class, and I'm so scared. I'm not a huge fan of public speaking. What do I do if they don't listen to me or pay attention? What do I do if I get nervous? Whatever. All the what ifs. And I was walking in to teach, and she said, you'll be fine, just call me when you're done. And I should also say I'm a classic example of an only child. So I do whatever my mother tells me still to this day. And I said, okay, that sounds great. So I went in and taught. And I would say 10 minutes into it, I thought, this is awesome. They actually think I know what I'm talking about. They're paying attention to me. I think I'm doing a good job at it, or at least I'm not doing a horrible job. And I literally fell in love with being in the classroom. And so I called my mother after I got done, and I told her, I said, I just finished. And she said, how was it? And I said, it was amazing. It's like the best thing in the world. I love it. And she said, well, I know you wanted the big paycheck and the actuary and all that stuff, but you can kiss that goodbye. You come from a line of educators. It's in your blood, and you obviously, basically she just said you found what you should be doing. But she said, kiss the big paychecks and all that stuff goodbye, but say hello to an incredibly great schedule and a rewarding life. Which I always say that if I can go to bed at the end of the day, this is kind of my philosophy on life that I'm getting into now, but if I can go to bed at the end of the day and put my head on my pillow, and I know that I did not hurt anybody that day, and hopefully I made somebody's life a little bit better, but at the very worst, at least I didn't do anything bad or hurt anybody, then that's a good existence. That's a happy thing. And so I found that with teaching. I can reach students, and I guess the way I teach mathematics, it's much more than math. It's about communication with the students and really teaching them things that much more than just problem solving equations and stuff like that, but how to be better students and to educate themselves in general. It's hard to explain. It's just, I don't approach teaching mathematics like a typical, what you would think of, I guess, as a typical math teacher. I'm much more about the process than I am, did you get a negative sign or a positive sign wrong? So for me, it's much more than just teaching mathematics. It's teaching people.
One of the central themes of this year's Common Book, Notes from a Young Black Chef, is tenacity. What does tenacity mean to you?
I don't even think of it as tenacity. Again, going back to being an only child, my mother used to call it stick-to-itness. She would say, you have to have the stick-to-itness to finish this project that you started. Anytime I would tell her I have too many things to do, I don't know how to get it all done, she would say, if you don't pick a spot and start, you're never going to finish. Just pick a spot, start it, and see it through. And to me, that's tenacity. It's the wherewithal to stick to what you're trying to do.
So based on that, I was thinking, can you recall a time in your own life where you had to draw on this stick-to-itness or tenacity to overcome a specific obstacle?
No, that's a theme that runs through all of my life, I think. It was with everything. Stick-toing, now I'm mixing my words, stick-toing, sticking to the decision to go back to school. I did not see school through, obviously, the first time around when I was 18 or 19 and started school. I thought, hey, this is a great time to go out and stay out late with my friends and play video games and pretty much do anything but go to class. And so I did not finish. I ended up dropping out after about 2 years. Well, 3 or 4 years. I had about 2 years worth of credit. And as a result, I had to get a job. I actually at one point was working 3 jobs, but I did what I had to do to survive. So I stuck to, if I wasn't going to go to school, I stuck to my decision to work retail or whatever I was doing, and to be responsible and do my job. But that's really a side avenue of things that happened, because going back to my education, when I was 38, I decided, I want to go back to school. I was working for a large communications company that would often basically had the attitude that we pay you really well and you don't have to have an education to work here, and we pay you super duper well, which they did. And if you don't like it, we will find somebody else. They would say this, to sit in that chair and do that job and take those calls, and you can go. So after one too many times of them doing that, I said, you know what, here's a month's notice. I'm gone. Go ahead and start looking for that person today, if you want. And I decided to let go of everything I knew. I was living in Waco, and I have a house down there still. And I let go of everything I knew and went back to school at A&M Commerce in Greenville, Texas. I was living and commuting to Commerce, but I decided to stick to it and go back to school and see through what I started when I was much younger. And it was the best decision I ever made in my life. But I think having the tenacity to see something through applies to so much more than just education. For me, the education was the biggest aspect of it, but it's the way to succeed in life. If you give up, if you don't pick a spot and start and then see it through and you give up, you're never going to get to the goal that you want. So I just think it's a major theme in life in general.
It's kind of interesting because hearing you describe the job you had with what was it, telecommunications company, I can imagine a lot of people who would become complacent there. For example, if your focus is on the income only and you're willing to sacrifice everything else that's important to you, it must have taken a whole lot of, bravery, I guess, courage to kind of break out of that and say, you know what, I'm going back and going back to where I started to finish it.
It did. And there were definitely times, because my job was to handle problem phone calls that came in and then turn that person around, handle their problem, fix their problem, make them happy, and then sell them something. And so oftentimes you didn't get to answer the phone. It's automatic. You hear this beep and there's somebody saying, hey, you blankety blank, my phone isn't working, da da da. Okay, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, let me help you out. And of course, here's the rebellious part of me that is wanting to say, well, hey, you blankety blank, don't talk to me that way. But instead, it's kind of bow your head, do your job, and then sell them something. And at that time, like DSL, internet stuff, I would have a little old lady, somebody who was obviously not needing to upgrade her computer network to the fastest network that we offered, but I was supposed to sell it to her, and I wouldn't do it. There were times, and they would monitor your calls, and I was very fortunate that my boss was a really good person, but he would call me in and say, why didn't you try to sell that person such and such? And I would say, they don't even have a computer. I mean, it would literally that happened. It was somebody who didn't have a computer, but the lady said, if you like, I'll do whatever you say, young man, basically. I trust you. And I thought, no, I can't do that. So there were times where I didn't really get in trouble, but I would get a talking to, why didn't you try and do that? And when I let go of that, I was making more money after it was a union job too. So within 12 months, you were maxed out, the same as everybody else. And I was making more money at that time than I made until 6 years ago without an education. But I felt like I was owned by a corporation, and I didn't like that. And I wanted to have more autonomy and to be more of my own person and to live what I think is a good life. So I've always said for me, it was really scary. I kind of think about the old gym things where you climb up the rope, one hand over another hand. And I'll jokingly say it was kind of like letting go with both hands and trying to grab onto something higher. But it was so worth it. I mean, I think that having that gumption to do something and see it through makes a big difference.
But that's exactly what I was just thinking. I was wondering if there was any point when you made the decision and you returned to school, did you ever have a doubt? Did you ever think, I've made a big mistake here?
No, I can honestly say no, and it's only because I found teaching before I had to let me go back. I never thought I made a mistake leaving. I was very fortunate in my circumstances that I had a friend who had a place that I could stay at for free. And I was in a good position. I didn't have money to do what I wanted, but I wasn't hurting for anything. At least I didn't think I was. And I was really fortunate that when I decided to go back to school after 2 years, I rushed through to finish. I had enough credits for about 2 years worth of credits. And I remember I was so proud of myself. I graduated a week before I turned 40 with my bachelor's. And when I started that master's program and went into the classroom, I instantly knew that I had done what I needed to do. So any regrets might have possibly occurred during that first year. When I first went back to school, when I was 38, I sold a bunch of my stuff to pay for tuition. And did, I collect records. So I sold a bunch of my punk rock stuff, all the Misfits 7 inches I had. Anyway, I sold all of that stuff. I sold a ton of my Star Wars toys. I'm kind of a geek, I guess. And I'm happy to claim that. But I sold that stuff to pay tuition to go back to school. And I did that for over a year to survive the first year and a half of school. And so there may have been some regrets at that point, but as soon as I got into the classroom, no, I've never looked back. I've never wished I had stayed, even though it took a long time to get to the point where I'm making as much now as I was back then. Happiness, you can't put a price on it.
Coming back to school relatively later in life, I think will resonate with a lot of our students at Northlake. Having had that time between your your first attempt at college and then returning later. How did those experiences in between change you in the way that you approached the second chance at college?
Oh, it was night and day. The first time I went to school, I didn't value so many things. I totally blew off speech class, didn't value that at all. History, wasn't a big fan of. English, I mean, I fell in love with mathematics right away. So I was really fortunate. I originally, when I was 18, I wanted to be a marine biologist. And so anyway, that's a whole different story. But I ended up with a professor that I knew his son. His son and I were really good friends, and he knew that I had come from kind of a rough background, I guess, and he took an interest in helping me and encouraging me. And so all I cared about was math. He was a math professor. I did math, and would sign up for all my math classes and never paid attention to anything else. It was amazing that I passed any of those. And then when, fast forward to the age of 38, I had developed discipline and a work ethic that I approached school as a full-time job. If I wasn't studying, it was only because I was in the classroom, in my classes, or fixing dinner and lunch. I mean, it was literally go to class, get home, open the books, and study nonstop. So I had a completely different approach to it. I had a different approach, not just to how I studied or how hard I worked at it. I valued things that I didn't value the first time around. When I took my speech class, I thought, wow, why didn't I pay attention to this when I was 19 or 20? This would have helped me so much to be able to speak in public, even from a sales point, because I was I worked in retail. I had a new appreciation for speech class. I had a whole new appreciation for history. I approached everything with different, with open eyes, I guess. I wrote, when I was my first year back in school, I had an English class, freshman English class, because I had never finished English when I didn't care about English back then. And so I hadn't finished it successfully. And so I had this English class and they had us write an ethnography. And I remember thinking, this is really cool. And I had a whole new approach to it, where I took things seriously and got so much more out of it than I did when I was 18 or 19. I saw how things were connected. I guess I had kind of grown up. I hope I had grown up. I was 38, so. But yeah, it was a completely different approach, and I saw value in so many things I hadn't valued before.
Something that occurs to me thinking about your story and the book, it seems on the surface that there's not a lot in common between being a math professor and being a fine dining chef. But I'm wondering if there's some part of Kwame's story in particular that resonated with you when you were reading his experience.
I would say just the fact that defeat wasn't necessarily a bad thing, that you can learn from your failures, that you can learn how to do something better, that a systematic approach, and I guess going back to the word tenacity, will get you through all of the rough spots and what you may think at one time is a failure. And later on you realize, that wasn't a failure. That was a major success. I mean, I was thinking about talking to you today and about my things I went through growing up, things that may have happened, and thinking about just the concept of obstacles that you have to overcome. And I thought, this morning it hit me. I thought, I didn't think they were obstacles at the time. At the time, I didn't know any better. At the time, it was just life. And then you look back and you think, well, I could have done that better, or that was not the desired outcome at the time, but I'm happy. And if I'm happy today, then that has to be a result of all of those perceived failures and all of the obstacles, whatever that came up in the road at the time, uh, made me who I am today. And so I can't really look back and regret those things. I have to look back and really appreciate what it took to get here. And I think it also helps you to appreciate life in general.
That sounds like an excellent place for us to conclude our conversation. Thank you very much for sharing your story with us, Eric.
Thank you so much for having me, and I enjoyed talking.
And thanks to you all for watching. We'll see you next time.